I sat silently in court. I thought the verdict would be read. I thought my punishment would finally be announced. I thought this was the moment my life officially ended. Instead, my lawyer rose and said, "Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to play a video." My name is Brinley Carter. I'm 33 years old, and for nearly a year, everyone in that courtroom had been carefully taught to believe I was the villain in my own family story. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I didn't meet my mother's eyes as she sat behind me, dressed in calm, forgiving colors, clutching a tissue she hadn't actually used yet. I kept my gaze forward, still controlled. That's how you survive when silence is mistaken for guilt. They said I was cruel. They said I betrayed my blood. They said I destroyed my sister's future. No one asked why my hands shook when her name echoed through the room. No one questioned why my mother's tears always appeared on cue. They only saw the version of me my family had rehearsed for months. The lights dimmed. The screen descended. The video opened in our old kitchen. I was sitting at the table, thin, drained, barely able to sit upright. My mother stood in front of me, feeding me with her own hands, whispering, "Come on, sweetheart. Just one more bite." A murmur rolled through the courtroom. Then the camera shifted. My sister stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression tight with something cold and furious. Not concern, not fear, resentment, like my weakness was an offense. Behind the camera, my father's voice cracked. Someone started crying. Plates rattled. I felt the room change. And as the video kept playing, one truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't the story they'd been told. People think the truth starts in courtrooms. It doesn't. It starts long before, inside homes where silence is rewarded and obedience is mistaken for love. I grew up learning how to disappear. My sister, Callan, was the center of everything, loud, brilliant, always praised. I was the other one, the easy one, the daughter who didn't argue when plans changed or dreams were redirected. When something went wrong, I was expected to absorb it quietly so the family could keep moving. By the time I was 28, I was living back at home after my health collapsed. Chronic exhaustion, sudden fainting spells, weeks where standing felt like climbing a mountain. Doctors ran tests. My parents said stress. My sister said drama. That kitchen video? It was taken during the worst months. What the jury didn't yet know was that I wasn't being taken care of. I was being managed, fed when it looked good, isolated when it didn't. My mother hovered when people were around, but disappeared the moment doors closed. My father avoided eye contact altogether. And my sister? She hated that I was sick, hated the attention, hated the sympathy, hated that for once I wasn't invisible. She started telling people I was exaggerating, whispering that I was unstable, that I was manipulating our parents. Slowly, quietly, she rewrote me into a problem that needed to be solved. I felt it before I understood it. The way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The way my phone went quiet. The way decisions about me were made, without me. By the time I realized something was very wrong, my own family had already chosen a side. And it wasn't mine. The shift wasn't loud. It never is when betrayal grows slowly. It started with small things. Missed appointments I never canceled. Medications that went missing. Conversations that happened about me, not with me. My sister would smile at breakfast, then send messages to relatives by lunch. Messages I'd never see until much later. "She's getting worse," she'd say. "She refuses help. We're scared of what she might do." I was sitting right there. One afternoon, I overheard her on the phone in the hallway. She didn't know I was awake. "We can't keep living like this," Callan whispered. "She's unpredictable. What if she hurts herself? Or someone else?" My chest tightened. I pressed my fingers into the couch, trying not to make a sound. That was the first time I understood what she was doing. She wasn't worried about me. She was building a case. My parents started watching me instead of talking to me. My mother hid the car keys. My father began locking his office door. When I asked why, they exchanged a look that said everything. Trust had been removed. The day my sister suggested a legal consultation, she said it like a favor. Just to protect everyone, she told me, eyes calm, voice sweet. Including you. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask how love could turn into surveillance so quietly. But I was tired, bone-deep tired, and fear has a way of stealing your voice. So I stayed quiet. And that silence? They used it against me. Because when you don't defend yourself, people assume there's something to hide. By the time papers were filed and stories rehearsed, I was no longer a daughter or a sister. I was a liability. And the worst part? They looked relieved. That was when I knew whatever was coming next wouldn't be about helping me. It would be about removing me. The day everything shattered wasn't dramatic at first. It was quiet, controlled, almost polite. My sister chose a Sunday, family lunch, sunlight streaming through the windows, neighbor's home. She always knew how to stage things. I was called into the living room and told to sit. Two unfamiliar men stood near the doorway. One held a clipboard. The other avoided my eyes. "This is for your own good," my mother said quickly, like she was afraid I'd interrupt. My sister didn't speak. She just watched me, arms crossed, jaw set. The men asked questions I wasn't allowed to answer fully. Did I feel unstable? Had I been refusing care? Did I understand the risk I posed to myself? I looked at my parents. My father stared at the floor. My mother nodded for me to cooperate. Then the words landed. Involuntary evaluation. I laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. You can't be serious. My sister finally stepped forward. "We've been scared for months," she said, voice steady. "We've tried everything. Except listening. Except asking. Except believing me." When I stood, the man with the clipboard blocked my path. I felt hands on my arms, firm, professional. My mother started crying then, loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Please," she sobbed, "don't fight this." That was the moment something inside me went very still. As they led me outside, my sister followed. She leaned in close, her breath warm against my ear. "This ends today," she whispered. "You've taken enough." I realized then that this wasn't about concern. It was about erasing me. And as the doors closed behind me, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. They had made a terrible mistake. They expect revenge to look loud. Angry texts, screaming confrontations, meltdowns. Mine didn't. The evaluation center was quiet. Too quiet. White walls, clipped voices, plastic chairs bolted to the floor. They kept me for 72 hours. Observed. Questioned. Watched for cracks I didn't give them. I answered carefully, honestly, calmly, and that confused them. Because monsters don't explain themselves clearly. Liars contradict themselves. Unstable people lash out. I did none of that. On the second night, a nurse sat across from me and said, "Your story doesn't match theirs." That was the first crack. When I was released, it wasn't with apologies. It was with paperwork, records, evaluations, notes that quietly stated I was not a danger to myself or anyone else. My family was waiting outside. My mother hugged me too hard. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My sister smiled like she'd already won. They thought this was over. What they didn't understand was this. They had dragged me into a system that documents everything. And for the first time in my life, I stopped trying to survive them. I started studying them. Dates, statements, contradictions. Who said what and when? I requested records. I kept copies. I asked questions I'd never asked before. By the time the court date was set, I wasn't angry anymore. I was prepared. And preparation is far more dangerous than rage. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Maybe because I wasn't afraid anymore. My lawyer spoke softly, methodically, like someone assembling a puzzle in front of an audience. He didn't argue. He presented records from the evaluation, medical notes, statements from professionals who had no reason to lie. Then came the timeline. My sister's claims. My parents' signatures. The dates that didn't line up. The gaps where concern suddenly turned into legal action. The prosecutor objected once. The judge overruled him, without looking up. And then my lawyer said, "Your Honor, context matters." That's when the video began. Not the edited clips my family submitted. The raw footage. Uncut.
Time-stamped.
The feeding. The silence. The way my sister watched, not with fear, but with fury. The way my mother performed care, only when a camera was present. A juror covered her mouth. My sister whispered something to my mother. My mother shook her head, too late to stop the unraveling. When the video ended, the room didn't move. The judge leaned forward. "Miss Carter," he said to my sister, voice calm and sharp, "can you explain this?" For the first time, she didn't have an answer. And I finally understood something I'd waited my whole life to learn. Control collapses the moment truth is allowed to breathe. My sister tried to recover. She always did. She laughed once, too quickly, and said the video was taken out of context. Claimed it showed a moment of stress, not a pattern. My mother nodded along, tears already forming, ready to soften the room. But the judge didn't look at them. He looked at the file. Page after page turned. Notes from doctors. Dates that contradicted sworn statements. A highlighted paragraph from the evaluation that stated, plainly, "No signs of instability or danger observed." Then he asked one simple question. "Why," he said, "was this court involved at all?" Silence. The kind that presses against your ears. My father finally spoke, voice shaking. We were advised." "By whom?" the judge asked. All eyes turned to my sister. Her face changed, not dramatically. Just enough. The confidence slipped. The mask cracked. She realized, in that moment, that the story she controlled for years no longer belonged to her. The judge dismissed the allegations. Not postponed. Not reconsidered. Dismissed. My sister's breath came fast. My mother sobbed openly now, not for me, but for the loss of control. As I stood to leave, my sister grabbed my arm. "You didn't have to do this," she hissed. I met her eyes, calm and steady. "Yes," I said quietly. "I did. Because truth doesn't seek revenge. It simply ends lies." The final twist didn't happen in the courtroom. It happened 2 weeks later. A certified letter arrived at my sister's apartment, then another at my parents' house. The hospital review board had finished its investigation. False reports. Misuse of emergency procedures. Fabricated concerns presented as facts. The case didn't just vanish. It reversed. My sister lost her professional license within a month. The word misrepresentation followed her name everywhere she applied. My parents weren't charged, but they were flagged. Permanently. Systems remember even when families pretend not to. No one called me to apologize. They didn't need to. Silence finally meant peace. I moved out of state. Changed my number. Kept my last name, not because I forgave them, but because I no longer carried shame that wasn't mine. People still ask how I stayed so calm. The truth is simple. I wasn't calm because I was weak. I was calm because I had already survived the worst part, being erased by the people who were supposed to love me. If you're ever sitting quietly while others tell your story for you, remember this. Truth doesn't shout. It waits. And when it finally speaks, it ends the conversation.